Howdy howdy, Sea Devil here, and welcome to some unit testing between the Dowie and Norska. So in this episode we're going to look at Longbeards versus Norskan Berserkers. Now, are the Marauder Berserkers. Now these Berserkers are a very powerful unit, and I wanted to see how they matched up with our Longbeards. And I'm going to look at our regular Longbeards. I'm going to look at some chevron spots, and I'm also going to look at our Longbeards with great weapons and our Grumbling Guard, our Regiment of Renown. So we will take a look at all three of them, and I'm going to have a bit of a discussion about Marauder Berserkers in general, because these are a very powerful unit. And let's see what we got. Perfect. So but I guess without further ado, I'll go do an example test so you can see how I did the testing, and then we'll go over to the spreadsheet. I'll explain the spreadsheet and we'll go over the data. Now, for those of you who do not like details, just fast forward right to the end of the video. I'll try and do a summary there of this matchup and the Berserkers in general. For those of you who love the details, love spreadsheet work, love analysis, and like to think your way through this kind of thing, you know, buckle up. We'll get started. So, yeah, I'd seen these Berserkers used in some other fights. You know, I like watching some other YouTubers, and they talked about how good they were, and I wanted to see how they matched up. And they're kind of like the Witch Elves. In a way, I underestimated the Witch Elves until I tested against the Witch Elves. I found out how good they are. So we'll take a look. And the big thing is they have... so I test on this little map here. The big thing is they have... You can see they have minus 13 melee attack and melee defense stats, because our melee attack is 30, melee defense is 48, theirs is 40 and 25. And they don't have any armor, but they have huge weapon strength and a pretty big charge bonus. But it's that weapon strength that's going to get you. And the reason is they have a bonus versus infantry of 5, so that melee attack is not 40, it's 45, and this weapon strength is not 52, it's 57. It's kind of a little hidden stat. And they got 13 armor piercing damage, which is not nothing. And a lot of times these units are deceiving because they're not armor piercing. But if you look at it, we have 32 weapon strength, they have 52. So they have over 50% more weapon strength than us. So the 50% reduction we get from our armor just isn't as relevant. They also have two really important abilities. One is Frenzy. So as long as their leadership is above 50%, they have plus 12% weapon damage on that massive 52%. They have plus 8% charge bonus, which isn't really going to matter, but that plus 8 melee attack is a big deal. So as long as that's up, they're going to be at 48 plus 5 for their melee attack, which is going to be 53. Then they have this Berserk mechanic. So it cycles, it doesn't just go through the 3 stages. There's stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. So stage 1 they get 22% physical resistance. Stage 2 they get 13 melee attack, which is crazy, plus 22% physical resistance. All of these are for 30 seconds. Stage 3 they get plus 13 melee attack, plus 22% physical resistance, and rampage. And it just cycles through. So after it goes through phase 3, it will go back to phase 1 and keep going. So that's plus 13 melee attack, plus 13 melee attack, plus the 5 from the bonus versus infantry, plus the 8 here is 26 melee attack. So that's 66 melee attack these are going to have. Now our 48 melee defense doesn't look quite as hot. So anyways, let's go get the fight going. So I just always do it exactly the same, so the test is very repeatable. Again, I understand formations matter, but for the testing, repeatability is more important to me, so that we can get a very repeatable test. And if you want to look at the differential formations, I have a video on that. And there's lots of people that talked about them, you know, 3 wide or 4 wide or whatever. But you can see the Berserkers are winning. Our Longbeards are holding up okay. And Longbeards are they're an outstanding unit at 650. They're probably, I don't know if they're pound for pound the best, but I think they might be in the game with the pound for pound best sword and board unit in the game. They're very close if they're not. So now the Marauder Berserkers are sort of pulling away. They keep going through their buffs, but you know, you'll see they have 48 melee attack. You know, it'll go up to, you know, up and up, and so they beat our troops there. So we'll end that battle, and so 67 losses to 49. Let's go take a look and see if in the 7 battles we were able to win any. So the answer is no. We lost every fight, and in an average of 172 seconds. So I'll just explain this briefly for anyone who hasn't seen any of my videos on how I try to understand the data. I do 7 tests so that I can get an average. I look at the start time of the test, 59 minutes, 50 seconds, right when they engage, the end time when the first unit breaks, so 56 minutes and 53 seconds. Then I get a battle time. So they fought for 177 seconds. So I look at the starting hit points and the end hit points of each unit, Berserkers and Longbeards. Then I divide by the time it took to find out the Longbeard's DPS, or damage per second. So in this case it was 32.3, and then I look at the Berserker DPS, 33.7. Then I try to see who won the Battle of the Gold. So I take each unit's ending hit points divided by their starting hit points multiplied by their gold cost. So in this case, the gold differential is we lost 41 gold by taking that engagement. This means the Berserkers truly beat us, because you can lose a battle and still win gold if you've got the right unit up against the right unit. Then I do how much gold per minute are we losing, because I think that's an important factor to understand in some cases. And I've recently added a gold ratio. This doesn't come into play very often, but the gold ratio is basically when we have a positive and we want to compare one unit to another unit when they're vastly different in overall cost. Like one unit costs 1,200 and another unit costs 300. How do they compare in this situation? This gold ratio goes, how much gold did I have to spend to get this gold difference in my pocket? And then I look at the win-loss ratio, because that's also important, and have a little stats down here in averages. But basically the story of this is we lost about 72 gold in this fight by bringing up our Longbeards against these Berserkers. And you think our Longbeards would do good because they have lots of armor. These guys aren't a quote-unquote armor-piercing unit, and our Longbeards don't do armor-piercing damage, and these guys have no armor. So they're a pretty good matchup, but the Berserkers are just so powerful. They're able to take our Longbeards and finish with 32% of their health. So I wanted to go and look at the Longbeard again. Now there's 2 real sweet spots for chevrons, for ranks with the Longbeards. The very first one, which I would recommend, if you can swing it in there, always grab it. The first rank only costs 29 gold, and it gives you 3 stat points here plus 1 leadership and a little bit of vigor. And this is a very important, a very, very good stat line. And, because you get, with the 1 chevron, you go from 48 melee defense to 50 and 30 to 31, as you can see right here. And the next sweet spot comes at rank 4 chevron. So the very next chevron, you can see we're going to go from 31 and 50 to 31 and 51. So we're not getting much. Then we go from 32 and 53. And this last one, 33 and 55. And if we go up again, we only go 33 and 56. So that 4 chevrons is actually a very nice stat line for the Longbeards, 55 melee defense. You start going too much beyond that, and there's diminishing returns, because your melee defense can only go so high before the unit you're fighting will always hit you. So I actually did 2 tests. I'm not going to show both. I'll show the example fight here, but I did one with 1 stat, or rank 1, and one with rank 4. So we'll get in there and show you what that rank 4 fight looks like against the Marauder Berserkers. Here we're 768 gold. They're 750 gold. We're worth almost the same. So we'll go and just take a look what that fight looks like. So we lost pretty handily in all 7 fights in the first matchup with our Longbeards with no chevrons. We'll show this fight, and then I'll go to the data and we can take a look at that. Alright, we'll get into that fight. And obviously with those extra stat points, our Longbeards, they will do better. They always lose off the charge. There's nothing we can do. They have 26 extra charge than us. But you can see our Longbeards are starting to fight back. They think the fight's even now, and they're starting to come back a little bit. They're starting to catch the Berserkers. You can see they think they're winning. This cross is flashing green. But the Berserkers keep getting that 22% damage resistance, the extra melee attack. So it's pretty close. So the Berserkers think they're winning. The Longbeards think it's even. The Longbeards think they're winning. So it goes back and forth, but it is much, much closer as you can see. And these ones, a lot of them go down right to the wire, but you can see our Longbeards are pulling away a bit here. And they're definitely going to win this fight now because they have quite a few more models. So they go ahead and beat the Marauder Berserkers. They're a little more expensive, only 18 gold, but now they can beat them. So let's take a look at what the stats look like for 1 chevron and then for 4. And I know some of you have wanted to see a bit of an analysis when it comes to the value of chevrons in terms of the outcome of battles. I've done that a few times within these types of videos, but we'll go and take a look. So when we add 1 chevron, what is the result? So we actually won 1 of the 7 fights. You know, the battles lasted about 20 seconds longer, and they went from 32% of their hit points to 21%. You know, everything went better. We only lost 33 gold instead of losing 72 gold. And again, that's comparing against 679 as opposed to 650. And, you know, quite a big improvement with that 1 stat point. So you can see we spent 29 gold and we gained 40 gold, and that's 40 gold above and beyond the 679. So it's like you're getting a 2-to-1 return on your gold basically when you add that first chevron. It's quite valuable. So you know, still we're only won 1 time. So what happens when we go to our real sweet spot of 4 chevrons? What does that look like? Now we won the battle in there, but you know, we got to run this 7 times so we can see how the stats pull out. So we actually won 4 out of the 7, so 57% of the fights, and we pulled a slight positive on the gold differential, a positive of 26 gold, which means we are now winning gold in that engagement. Our unit's a little bit more expensive, but we win a little bit more than half the time, and the fights are close. We're finishing with 16% of our hit points. They're finishing with an average of 11. So, I mean, and the battle time has gone up to 210 seconds from 194, so another, you know, 15 seconds-ish. But a Longbeard with 4 chevrons can hold up your front line when Berserkers show up, if there's no magic and no buffs and all these other good things. But really, this is not a great engagement in that front line, because a lot of times, I mean, you want to win fairly decisively. Now, I didn't test at higher levels, and I'll show you why. We'll go into the next set of tests. But at 4 chevrons, if you wanted to bring some Longbeards at 4 chevrons and put them in your front line and you expected the Berserkers, they'll hold the line and they'll win some of those fights, more than half, if there is no other external factors. So the problem with going too much past this sweet spot of 4 chevrons, let's say we keep on going up and we find another sweet spot at 859. Let's say that's a sweet spot. Now we have 859 gold here, and they, you know, let's say they beat these Marauder Berserkers handily. What happens is you get into a weird spot. Yes, this unit wins, but I can also get myself a Dwarf Warrior and miners with blasting charges for 850 for the same price. And these miners with blasting charges do some pretty brutal damage to low armor things, and this starts to lose value pretty quickly. I mean, those Berserkers absolutely demolished Dwarf Warriors. Maybe I'll do some quick tests at the end to show some of these combinations, but that's why, you know, this 4 chevrons is quite a sweet spot, because it's hard to match that up with anything else. So the next unit I wanted to look at, obviously, is our Longbeards with great weapons. Now we know our Longbeards with great weapons are underperforming in almost all cases for their value, but I just wanted to see how do they match up against those Marauder Berserkers, because they have 100 armor. Marauder Berserkers don't technically have armor piercing, though they kind of act like they do. So let's see how our Longbeards with great weapons for an extra 100 gold match up against the Marauder Berserkers. Yeah, I know I always say that the Longbeards underperform. That's stat for stat. I mean, the Longbeards are great weapons. You can... It doesn't mean that if you take Longbeards with great weapons, it's an instant loss. It's just it means there's usually better choices. So we'll bring the Longbeards with great weapons up against this fight, and they start losing pretty much right away. The Marauder Berserkers are winning, and they are going to start pulling away pretty fast now. Our Longbeards with great weapons really struggle in this fight because they don't have that melee defense to try and counteract some of the Marauder Berserkers' attack, and they don't have that great a weapon strength, and it's armor piercing, and they don't have armor, so it doesn't really matter. And yeah, they just get the crap beat out of them basically. So we'll end that battle and we'll go look at the data. Yeah, the Marauders only lost 31 to our 60. They just crushed us. I like anytime you get close to half, that's a demolition, really, because that's absolutely the worst case scenario. Of two equally valued units, one of them is losing half, or you know, you're losing twice as many models. It's really, really bad. So we'll go and take a look at what that looked like when we fought all 7. And of course, we lost all 7. And we lost 242 gold in that engagement. And they finished with an average of 48% of their health. It's an absolute demolition. You just don't send your Longbeards with great weapons. If you have them in your build for some reason against Norska, maybe you have 1, maybe you have 2 in the back line, just do not send them up against Marauder Berserkers unless you have to. Sometimes you have to anyways. There's nothing you can do. I didn't actually look at the chevrons for this because it is such a lopsided victory. You know, with them finishing with 50% of their health. I mean, I could have chevroned it up so it would be close. I just thought I would look at the Regiment of Renown because it's at 1,000, and so I thought I would grab our Grumbling Guard. Grumbling Guard are like a rank, similar in stats to a rank 9 Longbeard, similar. And plus they obviously have the old Grumblers for the vigor, and they have I think that's it. So let's take a look at how the Grumbling Guard do against these Marauders. And the Marauder Berserkers are quite a good unit, and we'll see if they win. So we'll get in there, and you know, they're worth 250 more gold. They're ranked up, and so they should do pretty decently in terms of winning.
The clans unite!
Okay, so we'll go up against the Marauder Berserkers. And you can see off the charge, not that awful. We're about even on kills. Now the Longbeards, the Grumbling Guard, believe that they're winning, and they're definitely got more kills, so they're starting to pull away from the Berserkers a little bit. And the Berserkers will keep getting those stat buffs, and they'll cycle through them, but it looks like our Grumbling Guard is definitely winning, though the Marauder Berserkers are definitely taking some health off our Grumbling Guard. The Grumbling Guard are not going to come out of a fight with the Marauder Berserkers with like half health or anything like that. So yes, they do win. So let's go take a look at what the stats show us from that battle. How did the Marauder Berserkers actually do, even though they lost? Alright, so we'll go down to the last bit of stats, and the Marauder Berserkers actually won 1 of the 7. So our Grumbling Guard won 6 of 7 for 85%. Our Grumbling Guard only finished with 20% of their health. The Marauders with 10%, but you know. And here's the big thing, and here's why I say you watch these matchups. Even though we won 6 out of 7, we lost an average of 120 gold. So even, you know, we only had 1 positive victory. The very first one, we won 33 gold, but the rest we lost 350 when we lost. We lost as much as 167 gold even though we beat them. And that's kind of the important thing to understand, that, you know, when you have the wrong matchup, even though your units, that's exactly how you really lose. So the Grumbling Guard, Grumbling Guard is a very, very good unit, and there's a lot of good reasons to bring it, and there's reasons to bring it in this matchup. But you'd be very reticent to put them up against the Berserkers unless you absolutely had to, because the Berserkers are going to pull value in general. So anyways, that's a look at our Longbeards versus the Berserkers. I guess in summary, you know, definitely the Grumbling Guard, don't want them up against them. Our Longbeards with great weapons, absolutely not. They get demolished. That's a really bad idea. Our regular Longbeards are okay. And if I was going to bring them, you know, I've always wanted to bring them with one chevron, just because they're so much better at that cost. But four chevrons, they can win more than 50% against the Berserkers. They're kind of at and around that, and they pull a little bit of value, and they're going to do okay. But you know, this is just part of the analysis. I thought I would go over as well quickly some other options, because with those Marauder Berserkers, there's obviously other things you can do. And you know, you can look at a Dwarf Warrior and miners behind them. This is definitely a good combination in the case against Norska. And of course, with the Dowie, any of your backline archer, your quarrelers, your rangers, and your quarrelers are kind of in this matchup. They're your go-to units. They will absolutely demolish Berserkers because they have 15 armor, and they don't have. They get a ton of stats, but they don't have any protection against missiles at all. None. So from you know, 160 meters away, you can absolutely start pelting them. So I think Rangers or Quarrelers, possibly Bugman's Rangers, they are definitely going to do good in this fight. And when it comes to artillery, yeah, your flame cannons are nice splash attacks. We don't really have anything else. It's a splash attack. Of course, all your artillery is pretty good. And when it comes to your gyrocopters, your regular gyrocopter is going to be very good against these Marauder Berserkers because they don't have armor-piercing missile damage, and lo and behold, they don't have armor. So that's always going to be a good pick in the matchup to deal with the Marauder Berserkers. I did want to show one specific matchup that some of you will really quite enjoy, and maybe some of you have considered already, which is our Thane. And we'll just grab our Thane, and some of you already know exactly where I'm going with this. Our Thane with this Ironbeard's ring at 762. And a unit that I quite love, but there's not a lot of good places to use them, Iron Drakes. Because Iron Drakes don't do armor piercing and damage. You know, their missile damage has some armor piercing, but very little. Mostly just regular missile damage. But it does cause that burnt, so -8 leadership to a unit that has an ability like Frenzy, which is reliant on leadership being above 50%, is really good. And our Thane giving them an extra 22% weakness to fire damage should be alright. So let's just for fun go take a look at what that looks like in game. So I actually I put together a quick build, and maybe I'll show it at the end of this as well. Just a preliminary build for Norska, trying to use this idea of can I go back further? There we go. So trying to use this idea of the combination where I make these guys weak to fire damage because of what is that, and I use these Iron Drakes. So we'll get him in here, and we'll get you guys there, and we'll just watch how fast we roast these guys. One volley, not half, but 3,000 plus with one volley, 3,000 plus health. Second volley in. Oh, that's beautiful. Another 2,000, and they're routing because they're burnt. And you can see, I mean, they're down to 2,000 health from 7,602 volleys. from these Iron Drakes, and our Thane has, you know, taken what, 500, 400 damage. So and on top of everything, it's incredibly satisfying. Now, not that these guys wouldn't just pull through and go kill your Iron Drakes. I just wanted to demonstrate the idea. So I'm gonna go show a potential build, and that I think might be really fun in this matchup. And that build is using a Rune Lord with no abilities, and you'll see why eventually. We'll use 2 Thanes, both of them with this Ironbeard's ring for the 22% weakness to fire. And if we're going to have Thanes with weakness to fire, we've got to have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass in there somewhere, right? And if we're going to have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass in there, we might as well have the Dragonback Slayers, because they can also make things weak to fire. We should probably have a couple of Miners with blasting charges, because their blasting charges will be even extra powerful. So, yeah, fire damage, flaming attacks with these things in there. And let's get in this army some Iron Drakes. So 4 Iron Drakes, a couple Rangers for the sides. We know we like those Longbeards, so a couple Longbeards, chevron them up a little bit, and then fill it out with Dwarf Warriors. And there you go. You have 5 Dwarf Warriors, 2 Miners with blasting charges, 2 Longbeards to help with that encouragement aura. We do have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass that do fire damage that can synergize with the Thanes. We have the Dragonback Slayers that can synergize with these Iron Drakes, these 4 Iron Drakes. We do still have enough for some Rangers just to take out, you know, Marauders with Horsemen and stuff like that, or they can shoot at a big target like Throg or, you know, Ice Wolves or whatever. And I think, and it's a 20 stack, because I love this this idea of a 20 stack. I think it's just a brilliant idea. And I've saved this army. You know, the Rune Lord, no abilities. The Rune Lord's just gonna run around and try not to die, to basically make sure none of our units get discouraged too much. But when you look at this army, for me, it's really satisfying. And the funny thing is, like, I don't know how. Like, I think the Dragonback Slayers are the ones to bring. You know, like Norska can bring. Like, they have so many monsters. You know, they can bring War Mammoths and, you know, Frost Worms, Giants, and stuff like that. But I think, you know, like Trolls, Skin Wolves, maybe they would bring Skin Wolves, Anti-Large Frenzy, Regeneration. I think, do they have anything that's anti-infantry? Yeah, armored, anti-large. So, you know, I think Norscan players would be reticent to bring too many big things against the Dawi, for the 2 reasons that Dawi have charged defense against big things, and they have giant slayers now and regular slayers who are going to do good against all their big things. Because their big things only have 70 armor. You know, these guys have 15 armor. So you're going to see, I think, Norscan Ice Wolves, you know, maybe some Warhounds, but they're Cav 50, 15, 15, the Chariot 85, maybe you see some Chariots, I don't know. Hunters 15, 15. Their infantry is all low, 15, 15, 15, 15. You're not going to see Marauder Champions. You might see Marauder Champions with great weapons. They're 80, but they're only 80 armor. They're not 100, and they have 40 armor piercing. So I could see an army like this, even though you don't have a lot of anti-large or armor piercing in this army, it would absolutely buckle pretty much anything that comes to that front line, unless they just go a front line of, you know, nothing but Marauder Champions. Like, if they bring something like that to the fight, okay, this build's going to be a little unpleasant, but it's not going to be impossible, because these guys are basically making even these guys 22% weaker to fire damage, right? And these guys do fire, and, you know, so do these, and you got your Dragonback Slayer. So, and the thing is, you have enough leadership with the Longbeards with their immune to psychology, or their encourage, and your Thanes have encourage, and your Rune Lords have Encourage for your lower level units. Plus you have lots of Iron Drakes. It's not like you just have one unit sitting in the back. You got 4 or so. And what do you focus on in this army? You know, I guess maybe the Dragonback Slayers if you're attacking it. You know, if they bring a caster with Faded Buna, I guess that's the only thing you're going to put it on is the Dragonback Slayers. But anyways, I think that would be a pretty fun army. But I guess I'll just summarize one more time. You know, the Marauder Berserkers, very good unit, solid unit, even against the Dowie. They're pretty crushing. And you know, our Longbeards, which is I love Longbeards. I think they're my favorite unit in the game. Longbeards with just a sword and board, basic Longbeard. Can be chevroned up. One's going to be okay, but really they can be chevroned up to 4 to compete with the Marauders, Berserkers. And if you want to put some of them in your front line and have a front line of 5 Longbeards, maybe you're going to be okay. Then you're a little bit vulnerable if you bring nothing but armor piercing. But yeah, and your Longbeards with great weapons are a definite no-no. They get absolutely massacred by Berserkers, and even your Grumbling Guard lose a lot of value if they happen to fight them. Grumbling Guard might not actually be a good unit to bring in this matchup at all, but I mean, I'll do some testing over time and we'll see that. But really, the testing is pretty clear. You can squeak out a smidge of value with Longbeards. Definitely not with Longbeards with great weapons or your Grumbling Guard. So anyways, would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you fought with the Dowie against Norska? What do you think of that matchup in general? What units do you think are really must-haves in there? What did you think of that 20-stack build? You know, kind of a big, wide, fat build like that. And what would you think would be the best units to bring against Norska? Love to hear from you. I love comments, even if you stop in just to say hi. I always say hi back. And I guess with that said, hope you found it interesting, and I will see you soon.